You have been told, though, to still assume the COVID-19 virus is still out there in the community. And despite this couple of days of positive news, there are still thousands of people across Queensland in isolation after being in close contact with COVID-positive people. So what are your rights when it comes to staying safe at your workplace? Should your employer be letting you work from home? Can you force a colleague to leave the office if they're sneezing, if they're coughing? Brad Petley is an employment lawyer and principal at Acumen Lawyers. Brad, good morning.
Good morning, Rebecca. It's great to be speaking again.
Pleasure too. Pity we can't have you face to face, but of course we still got our own restrictions in studio about having guests here. So depending on where you are, the layers affect you differently. What about you? Are you going into the office to work or are you working from home?
A bit of half and half, but yes. Look, I'm no different from a lot of employers right now. Some days in, some days not.
Yeah. Should people be able to choose to work from home if they want to?
Well, it begs a few questions. Whether that job can be performed from the employee's home. Like, have they been permitted to work from home up to this date? Because if they have, there would have been some sort of work health and safety audit of their home to make sure it's a safe workplace. And some of the larger employers are trying to re-establish a connection with their workforce and sort of kickstart the team building again by bringing employees back to the workplace. Is that happening? Is there a chief health officer direction in place applying to that workplace where they can't come in?
Well, there has been a real push for, we're hearing, sort of corporate employees to be encouraged to come back into the city for various reasons, partly economic, partly for, perhaps some of that face-to-face or team building type things. But can you persist with an argument that says, look, I'm a desk worker. If I've got my computer at home, I can do my job and you just have to deal with, not having the water bubbler conversation or whatever else is lost?
Well, to put bluntly, if they haven't been directed to stay home by either an employer or because of an enforceable government direction, they'll need to come to an arrangement with their employer. And look, I suppose the starting point is this is a highly emotive topic. There are polarised views. You just only need to spend 1 minute on social media and you can pick that up. And we've all seen unfortunate incidents between citizens and shopping centres and things like that. And there's a lot of cynicism about government edicts and lockdowns out there. I picked it up from clients. So employers do need to tread carefully. And many employees are in a heightened state of anxiety, and so an employer should take an even hand when managing an employee concerns.
Yeah. And there's different sort of power dynamics at play. Like Brad, for example, someone's texted in saying, I've got a question for Brad, the employment lawyer. If I'm on a full-time contract and I'm stood down due to COVID until business picks up, can they ask me to come back on a casual basis and also infer that I could be terminated if I don't assist?
No, there'd be a number of breaches of workplace protections there. There's a complete change to the employee's workplace status from permanent to casual. No, there'd be a few issues there.
But again, it's the very uneven sort of power dynamic. Someone else has sent a text for you. Oh, this is from Jackie for you, Brad, saying, as a cleaner in 3 to 4 houses a day, do I have the right to ask my client to let me know if they are COVID safe, to be told if they've had a COVID test or if they're isolating? Jackie says, I've had 3 times I've not been told when they are waiting on COVID-19 results.
Yeah, look, I think that person is wise to take responsibility for their own work health and safety, and can ask those preliminary questions, like when they're a cleaner that goes to their houses. If they're self-employed, if they're an employee for a contract cleaner, those issues need to be raised with the employer because the employer has the overarching work health and safety obligation, and they would have to comply with a COVID safe plan with respect to their workers. So the first port of call, if that cleaner is an employee, is to direct those concerns to the employer.
Yes, but if they're a sole operator, I guess in some instances, if they can't get clients to respond, potentially they're just going to miss out on that business, aren't they?
They are, but I suppose if you think of the impact on that cleaner if they get COVID, how that would mean for them.
Yes.
quarantine or isolation.
It is challenging territory, as you said. Brad Petley, an employment lawyer and principal at Acumen Lawyers. If you've got a quick question for him, you can text it through right now, 0467 22612. I'll put it to Brad. Of course, his advice is general in nature. You should seek out specific advice that correlates to your own individual circumstances. Brad, another scenario that seems to be coming up is, say your colleague comes to work sick. They're sneezing, they're coughing, you know they haven't had a COVID test. Can you ask them to go home? Can you ask your boss to get them to go home?
Yeah, look, that employee should raise their concerns with the employer, but I suppose a starting point might be like people are friends in workplaces, and if someone's coughing and sneezing, that person could say, "Oh, look, are you okay? I'm concerned." And as you'd be aware, like the health authorities, if someone is suspected of having coronavirus or exhibiting symptoms like that, they should go and get tested and isolate from that moment onwards. So it would need to be dealt with fairly quickly. But bear in mind that we also get sinus on a particular day. So people need to have an even temperament and not immediately fly to assumptions that someone is about to infect them immediately.
What if your workplace isn't really strict on things like social distancing?
Yeah, look, that's something that could be raised with the employer, and to raise that concern with the employer is protected. Like the employer can't take disciplinary action. They breach the Fair Work Act if they take disciplinary action because someone's raised that concern. And there are various telephone hotlines to the health department, and also the Fair Work Ombudsman, where employees can make anonymous inquiries there, or even raise concerns if a workplace isn't complying with those social distancing or health directives.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for people to be aware, to ask questions, get information, and not feel like they're sort of hung out and on their own. Brad has just texted. Cam's texted with a question for you, Brad, saying, in the transport sector, we have the most transient employees in the nation. No vaccine priority, no health professional would be able to do their job without truck drivers, yet we get logged out of basic hygiene facilities from places we visit, everything from customers' businesses to truck stops. What rights do the truck drivers of the nation have, Brad?
That's a difficult one, Rebecca.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of that before, but nothing surprises me in the current state. And really, I think our authorities, in some respects, are playing catch up with these situations because we can't anticipate everything that's going to happen. All I can say is I sympathise with that gentleman's situation. Rebecca.
He's so right, though, isn't it, Cam? Saying, look, yeah, we wouldn't be able to get the vaccine around the place. We wouldn't be able to get masks around to people, or all of those health supplies. In fact, in the kind of the heroes of the pandemic, truck drivers should be up there in the accolades. Cam, I thank you for raising it, and hopefully, even by raising it, you might make businesses or truck stops or public loos or whatever it is just think a little bit more about the sort of facilities they provide for you. Brad, is your employer allowed to ask if you've had a COVID test?
There needs to be. Well, firstly, is there a government health directive in place? That's a start that would underpin that question. In general, no, and it's there are privacy regulations in place, but also there are as you'd be aware, there are certain jobs in the health sector that are subject to a public health direction about COVID, having had a COVID vaccination, and also National Cabinet has made that recent decision about residential aged care workers.
Yes.
If it's outside of that, generally speaking, no.
Can your employer ask if you've been immunised?
You're saying immunised for COVID or the flu?
But COVID, yeah. So the other question was really about whether you've been tested. What about, going forward, that more and more of the population, technically should be getting vaccinated? Can employers, can anyone else ask? Because we hear about overseas situations where you have to prove, like, I've been double jabbed in order to go in, whether it's Wimbledon or a workplace. Do you have to give that information up?
Not unless it pertains to the inherent requirements of that person's job. If they
Yes.
do have to go to certain places that are controlled.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, otherwise, no.
Yeah. I mean, the other issue that's popped up a number of times is in relation to masks, which the mandatory masks will relax in southeast Queensland as of 6 o'clock this Friday. But we've heard about circumstances where people in their workplace, I'm trying to think of some of the ones that have popped up over the last couple of days that I've heard about. In the deli, at the supermarket, there might be a sign saying, I have an exemption not to wear a mask. In terms of mask refusal, if someone else in your workplace is saying, no, I don't want to do it, but they don't have a set reason, who do you raise that with?
So, and you say, who do you raise that with? You're saying like a co-worker.
Yeah, is it? Do you go to your employer, or do you go to those, like the Fair Work Ombudsman, the health hotlines that you mentioned?
Oh yes, I think so. Look, if you are satisfied as an employee that there is a health directive in place where masks are required in those circumstances,
yeah.
First protocol is always the employer and have that discussion. But if you're not satisfied with that, well, then you can make those inquiries, and that's what you should do. But many of your listeners also would be covered, like employee listeners, will be covered by or a member of a union, and a union is another avenue for them to make that inquiry.
Brad, it's really useful information, and I feel like it's the sort of thing that's going to continue to be needed and clarified over the course of the coming months and who knows, maybe even years. Just a final quick question for you. We've talked a lot this morning about the NRL and a hub being established here in Queensland. Do you see rugby league players just as employees the same as everybody else?
Well, yes, I do, but I suppose I don't want to use the word special, but there are a lot of factors at play with the NRL competition and whether it and continues, and if it does continue, the impact on broadcasting obligations and so forth. And I'm not making any sort of value judgments or trying to place him on a pedestal any more than the citizen left or right of me. But there are a lot of moving parts to the NRL question.
Yes, you don't have to make value judgments. My listeners have done that this morning loud and clear. Brad, great to talk this morning. Here's to happy, healthy employees.
Yes, same, Rebecca. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Brad Petley, employment lawyer and principal at Acumen Lawyers.